And when he makes allegations that the former President Uhuru Kenyatta had a budget for corruption that he does not have, why didn't he disclose? That this is wrong. So we are dealing with a president who, for me, has no shred of integrity in him at all. The Auditor General report is absolutely crystal clear that there's corruption in all departments of government, including parastatals. But the president chooses to attack the judiciary because of things that are political to him, like the housing levy, for example.
Hello, a very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Candid Talk. Definitely, this is your most comprehensive political analysis show. Welcome. My name is Evans Okinyi, and of course, as we promised you, is that we'll be bringing you up to date with comprehensive analysis of everything that is taking place in Kenya and abroad. And of course, this fine morning, I'm joined by one of the sharpest legal minds we have in this country. I'm talking about none other than the Third Way Alliance party leader, Wakili Dr. Ekuru Aukot. I want us to understand some of these things that is taking place right now with regards to the kind of problem that we've witnessed between the judiciary and the executive arm of the government. They had a meeting the other day, and the president seemingly has had a problem with people going to court to challenge some of the policies of the government. What do you make of, first of all, the kind of meeting that was there between the judiciary and the president at State House at that particular moment? Was it legal?
Well, if the meeting had been organized without the public threats from the president, and even the false allegations or the unfounded allegations that the judiciary in Kenya and some of the judges are corrupt, if that meeting had happened without that, without that background, then it's okay for heads of arms of government to be able to meet to discuss progress, either in their respective dockets or not, because Martha Koome is the president and the head of the judiciary. William Ruto is the head of the executive, so they are equal. In that regard, yes, like Justin Muturi is the head of the National Assembly. Now, the background to that meeting is what makes the whole thing very suspicious. The whole meeting very suspicious, because there was a lot of innuendos, a lot of threats and intimidation and allegations without proof. We are a country of laws. He who alleges must prove. If you allege that a certain judge is corrupt, because what President William Ruto did is blanketly accuse everyone in the judiciary, everyone. All the judges in the judiciary, that they are corrupt. He never presented any shred of evidence to that effect. And remember, the President of the Republic of Kenya constitutionally is represented before the Judicial Service Commission by 3 representatives. There is the Attorney General, who is the Chief Legal Advisor to government. He sits at the JSC. Then there is one man, one woman from members of the public, who are all the President's eyes in the JSC. Now, all these people ought to have, and JSC is the disciplinary mechanism for judicial officers. So if you have a complaint today and evidence of corruption, you're supposed to present it before the Judicial Service Commission. Now, the president, unfortunately for me, is turning out to be a man who has no respect for the rule of law. He's turning out to be a man who has no respect for other institutions of government. He doesn't respect the independence of those institutions. And even recently, I'm sure we'll come to the Haiti case, where he says whether people like it or not, the deployment will continue. On the housing levy, he has said the same thing, despite the decision of the court. Now, William Ruto is turning out to be a man who really has not even read the Constitution. But I'm not surprised, because William Ruto, if you remember, was opposed to this Constitution. He was one of the people who was opposing the enactment of this new Constitution. But it also tells me that is one president who does not know how to use the instruments of power that he has. For example, the DCI, the Department of Criminal Investigation, is under him. The NIS, the National Service Intelligence Service, is under him. The police is under him, including even the military intelligence, all under him. So really, if he has evidence against any specific judge or members of the judiciary, What is so difficult in presenting that evidence before the public? Because what he has actually done is to just go on roadside declarations and accusations. And remember, this is a man also who has gone through, who has benefited from the decisions of the judiciary. So when decisions of the judiciary go against him, then they are corrupt. Because how come it's the same judiciary, headed by Martha Koome, that actually declared him the legitimately elected president of the Republic of Kenya? He never protested. If the judiciary was that corrupt, then why did he accept the declaration that he actually was legitimately elected? William Ruto has been acquitted by the same judiciary, and he's been accused of many things, including land grabbing and other crimes. I mean, you can go to your archives and see for yourself. So this is a person who has been arraigned before the judiciary. No judicial officer has sent him to jail. And when he makes allegations that the former President Uhuru Kenyatta had a budget for corruption that he does not have, why didn't he disclose? That this is wrong. So we are dealing with a president who, for me, has no shred of integrity in him at all, because he keeps on castigating the previous regime, and even to making such an allegation, a serious allegation that the President Uhuru actually had a budget to bribe the judiciary. That's a serious allegation, and for me, in the absence of any proving that, so he has now ended up intimidating the judiciary, and that's unfortunate in our country, because for me, the responsibility of the arms of government is well defined in the Constitution. The executive, enforces the law and all that. The judiciary, is the arbitrator, and the legislature makes the laws. So those duties are very much outlined. But it seems to me that President William Ruto, because we all know that so far he has bought parliament, he controls parliament, even members of the executive. Now the only arm of government he does not control is the judiciary, hence the intimidations. And having said that, I think it was a mistake for Martha Koome to succumb to that meeting, because that was the beginning of compromising the independence of the judiciary. Because even the outcome of that meeting was not about matters corruption. The outcome was, we'll give you more vehicles, we'll give you more money. So it announced actually the outcome was to bribe the judiciary with goodies, not to address the problem for which the president was complaining about.
When Martha Koome came forth and said that the meeting was for the mutual benefit of our country, because he's saying, look, here we've got a problem as a country. The president is complaining about the judiciary being corrupt and all that. Why don't we then have a conversation and find a way forward in how
that's a selective, that's part of the things that disappoint us about Martha Koome, because Martha Koome is playing into the hands of President William Ruto's bad policy, politics. Because let's draw parallels. I'm not saying there isn't corruption in the judiciary, but if I have evidence, I'll table it before the JSC. But let's also be honest. Isn't there corruption in the executive? Isn't there corruption in Parliament of Kenya today? We have members of Parliament who have confirmed that Parliament is just for sale. The president just tells them, pass this law, whether like the Finance Act has come out very strongly as a document that was procured, basically. So if the president was serious about fighting corruption, he should start with his executive. Just the other day, Margaret Nyakango has come out to actually say how there is corruption in the executive, the manner in which money is allocated in terms of salary. The Public Service Commission has come out to say that there are ghost workers, both in State House and actually the county of Narok, and they have given numbers. So why hasn't the president summoned the governor of Narok? Why hasn't the president summoned the PAC to discuss about that corruption? So here we have somebody who actually reported and figures. But the president is selective. If you look at the Auditor General report, the Auditor General report is absolutely crystal clear that there's corruption in all departments of government, including parastatals. But the president chooses to attack the judiciary because of things that are political to him, like the housing levy, for example, the deployment of police to Haiti. But he chooses not to look at the other corruption scandals that are happening in his own ministry. The first corruption scandal under his administration was the edible oil. Yeah? I mean, it was reported members of his own government administration who he appointed were actually implicated, but he has never summoned them. One minister was implicated, but what did he do? He just reshuffled him, moved him from that ministry to this ministry. One of those parastatal heads, powerful parastatal heads, is still there. So the president hasn't summoned them. Why is he summoning the judiciary over baseless allegations? Not to say that there isn't corruption. There is corruption across the board in this country. And I think it's one of the biggest problems we have in Kenya. Okay. But if he's really keen on addressing that corruption, then we must see him in action in all sections and departments of government.
Okay, be it as it may, you've just mentioned about the case of the edible oil scandal that we've witnessed here. Those were allegations, definitely reports by the media. No formal case had been tabled, and definitely none of that information had been substantiated. Do you think that the president would be in order to just come out of nowhere
were the president's claims against the judicial substantiated?
Neither were they.
Neither. But he took action and say, I want to meet you. So on the same vein, he should have also decided to meet the people behind the edible oil scandal.
Okay.
So you cannot have double speak.
So you're saying here that the president is talking from both sides of the mouth in this case?
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And he's not honest about it. And I don't think William Ruto is probably the person who will end corruption in this country, because after all, he has been implicated in so many corruption scandals, including, remember, the maize scandal that, for which he was even impeached in parliament. So I doubt he really will end corruption. I mean, even looking at the expenditure in his own office, the globe trotting all over, for me, it's still corruption, because you're spending public money against the provisions of Article 201, which talks about prudent use of public funds.
Okay.
So he is not prudent in expenditure of public money. That is corruption. So he is practicing at the very top.
Okay. Now, Wakili, one of the things that has actually rattled the president with regards to this kind of judiciary executive war that we're talking about here is the deployment of some of the members of police service to Haiti, of course, that troubled country therein, and you decided to go to court to actually challenge this act, of course, which was actually approved by the government in itself. Now, in the first place, the president is saying here that those who are going to court to challenge his policies are people who actually want to sabotage some of his programs. Tell me, you being one of them, how does this make you feel, and why in the first place did you decide to go and challenge that in court?
First of all, for me, as a constitutional lawyer and having participated in the writing of this country's constitution, I know exactly what we put in that document in terms of what is a police and police service and what is a force. Remember, we come from the history where the police was described as a police force, and when we were soliciting for views, Kenyans looked at the brutality, of the police, the inefficiency in terms of securing police. So we said, okay, let's divide between we renamed them the National Police Service, and we were very clear that it is a service to serve the people of Kenya within the jurisdiction of the Republic of Kenya. On the other hand, we categorized in Article 140, 240, the Kenya Defense Forces. Okay, and the Kenya Defense Forces, includes the Kenya Army, the Air Force, and the Kenya Navy.
And the Kenya Navy,
and the forces is what's under the National Security Council. They are under the command of the National Security Council. The Kenya Police Service are under the command of the Inspector General of Police, to be used internally. Okay, now, so the president cannot deploy. He doesn't even have the powers to deploy the Kenya National Police Service. But he has powers to deploy the Kenya Defense Forces under the command of the National Security Council. Okay? Now, Justice Chacha Mwita was so wise enough to distinguish in his judgment what a service means and what a force means. If you go to the National Police Service Act, sections 107, 108, and 109, they say that there may be a request from a reciprocating government for the deployment of police force. Now, that's a misnomer. That law already is subordinate to the Constitution. The police are not a force, they are a service, constitutionally speaking. So the act is actually wrong in describing it as a police force. Okay? So Chacha Mwita actually, and I mean, deconstructed that and said, this is a misnomer in the statute. If the statute really meant to, if the framers of the constitution meant that the police were supposed to be a force, nothing could have prevented them in describing it in chapter 14 as such. Okay? Yes. But the legislature, I think, made a mistake and used the word force because they were thinking pre-2010 constitution. So they are still held up with this idea that police was a force. But that's a mistake. But the constitution, being the highest law in the land, takes precedence. Okay. Now, there was another problem. Who is actually requesting for the deployment of police service to the Republic of Haiti? There is a man, a prime minister called Ariel Henry, prime minister, who actually was imposed by the United States of America as a prime minister. He's not elected. Now, under the constitution of Haiti, only a democratically elected president can make such a may make such a request to another country. But our law goes further to say there has to be a reciprocal agreement between the Republic of Kenya and any requesting city, say, for example, in this case, Haiti. There is no such a reciprocal arrangement between us and Haiti. And even when there is such a reciprocal arrangement, it has to be approved, debated by our government. Thirdly, it has to be gazetted. There was no evidence of gazettement of any reciprocal agreement because it doesn't exist. So again, it is illegal. It's not within our laws. So that's part of the reason why we went to court. But for me, even from a socio-political point of view, I come from northern Kenya. And you know, in northern Kenya, there's a lot of insecurity. We don't have enough security forces on the ground. So does it really make sense that a country that has inadequate police service sends its own police to serve another country when it cannot serve its own national citizen? So for those reasons, the idea of unconstitutionality, illegality under the National Police Service Act is why I went to court. Yeah. No,
so you've got nothing at all with sabotaging the president's policies, as he's saying, definitely.
One of his policies was not to send our police to Haiti. I didn't hear him say that during his campaign. So even if, first of all, it's not his policy anyway. This is a roadside discussion with, I think, when he met President Joe Biden in the United States of America. And I think he never really took time to look as to what our law says, what our constitution says about this. So he just acted willy-nilly. And that's not how Kenya is governed. Kenya is governed by law, by the constitution. So whatever pronouncement or promises you make out there, make sure they are in tandem with our legal framework.
After the ruling was made by Justice Chacha Mwita, definitely, the government has decided to go ahead and appeal. And we've seen them receive the support of the United States, of course, and a section of leaders, especially those allied to the Azimio la Umoja on Kenya side, has told of the United States of America to keep off affairs, definitely interfering with the affairs of this country. Do you see some sort of foreign interference or some sort of a foreign hand in what is taking place here?
Absolutely, but people need to go back to memory lane. Following the post-election violence of 2007, 2008, President William Ruto was one of the accused persons before the International Criminal Court for having committed crimes against humanity, including genocide, displacement of population, and all that. So at that point in time, he had become a persona non grata, especially in the Western world. And if you look at many of his trips right now, it's towards the Western world. So he's trying to clean up, gain this international image, but he's doing it the wrong way. And I think the United States is known to scout for puppet leaders in the continent or elsewhere that they can use and manipulate. And I think they have found a perfect match in William Ruto, a person who is desperate to be accepted in the global stage. You can see him now, I think this is maybe his 60th or 50th trip abroad. And it's not mainly to those the Western world. So I think the United States has really found a perfect match in him, somebody they can manipulate. Yes, and you're right. There is definitely a foreign interference in the management of our internal affairs. Because why is the United States so pronounced about the deployment of this police service to Haiti? As a student of history, the first country to colonize Haiti was the French, and they were defeated in the battle of, I can't remember the name, and sometimes in 1803, if I'm not wrong, that led to the independence of Haiti in 1st January 1804. This is a great country that defeated one of the greatest generals in Europe, General Bonaparte, and then of course they chased the French away. Then came the Americans, who invaded, or is it Canadian or Americans, either of them. Anyway, they invaded Haiti again, they defeated all of them. Then they used the UN to introduce cholera that killed, I think, upwards of 500,000 Haitians. So I've looked at the history of Haiti, I've done a lot of research on Haiti. Nobody's interested in a peaceful Haiti. They want it completely disturbed because Haiti is very rich. Contrary to what people tell you that Haiti is a poor country, actually it's not a poor country. Haiti is sitting on a lot of gold, sitting on a lot of oil, sitting on a lot of copper, and many, many other natural resources. In fact, America has the largest embassy in the world, in the Western Hemisphere, in Haiti. And I've always challenged, US friends. When I look at images of, say, an arrest of a black man on the streets of any street or any city in America, you'll see almost 10 or 20 police officers all ganging up against that black man. Meaning there is surplus police service in the USA. Why can they send these surplus police officers to Haiti? Secondly, the gangs they are saying are raining havoc in Haiti are actually harmed through Florida by the United States. So my question is, why is Kenya jumping into this messy affair of so-called superpowers between France, Canada, and France? And the USA. These are people with mightier, more powerful armies, police service. Honestly, compared to Kenya, even if you look at the UN ratio of one police to civilian population, we haven't even met that criteria. So why are we going to Haiti if it's not other interest? So yes, definitely there is interference, and you can also draw parallels to dalliance of our president with the IMF and the World Bank. You can see him in every meeting, he's meeting IMF. These are Bretton Woods institution controlled from Washington, D.C. Obviously America. So they want to suffocate us with the debt so that we are not able to get out of the trap. And it's unfortunate that the chief commander-in-chief of our country is the one that's being used by these foreign elements.
Okay. In case, of course, that kind of appeal, the government has said they are going to appeal, but I'm just asking, I need to know.
They haven't appealed. We've been looking at the portal, and to be honest with you, if William Ruto really cared about the integrity and sovereignty of the people of Kenya, he should be thanking us for taking this case to court, because we are saving the country embarrassment. And don't forget, people, those gangsters in Haiti have said, should Kenyan forces step into Haiti soil, there will be enemy combatants, and they'll come back in coffins, and mark these words.
Should they appeal? Do you think there is any chance that
Zero chance. Zero chance, and we are waiting for them.
Thank you, Wakili, for making time for us, and of course it's been kind of cumbersome getting to you here, but I'm more than glad to have you on board, and we do hope that next time we knock on your door, definitely you'll open up to us, and we'll actually share and tell people what is actually happening in the country. We'll be more than glad to host you once again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there was a conversation here with the Third Way Alliance party leader, one of the sharpest legal minds whom we have in this country, Dr. Ekuru Aukot. You've had him there giving his views on what is actually taking place in this country. Kindly weigh in on this conversation and tell us what you think about what we've just discussed here. And if at all you're watching us for the first time, kindly subscribe to our channel here, and please stay tuned to some of our programs that will be coming to you next. Till we have this conversation again, have yourself a lovely day. My name is Evans Okinyi.